This episode of Kind of Funny Gamescast is brought to you by Blue Apron. Blue Apron's the #1 fresh ingredient and recipe delivery service in the country. The mission's to make incredible home cooking accessible to everyone. Not all ingredients are created equal. Fresh, high-quality ingredients make a real difference. So it's important to know where your food comes from. For less than $10 per person per meal, Blue Apron delivers seasonal recipes along with pre-portioned ingredients to make delicious home-cooked meals. Greg Miller, you might know him from his, world-renowned Instagram series, Cooking with Greggy, is all about this Blue Apron goodness. Check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/gamecast. No S, just Gamecast. You'll love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron. So don't wait. That's blueapron.com/gamecast. Blue Apron, a better way to cook. Cooking with Greggy, man. He's good. He makes good stuff. All right, that's a perfect segue into topic 2. It's not. It's just,
It's just fun.
Yeah, it was just fun to say. I want to talk about Horizon Zero Dawn a bit more. Specifically, Aloy being the main character, Aloy being a woman. This game featuring a female protagonist, and kind of the repercussions that has had on people's thoughts about the game and all of that. Colin, do you have anything?
Yeah, I think Greg and I got on PS I Love You an interesting letter from a guy. I'm kind of just paraphrasing it, but just that he has a problem with playing as females in games, and there's too much. Almost, I guess it's fair to say he was almost making the claim there's too much diversity, and he can't relate to characters.
His whole thing was, as a man, he can't relate to these games that are putting women into the title character.
Bizarre. Yeah. And you've been seeing this a lot because there is a current of social justice in games coverage, which I agree with, and I think that it's kind of silly. I think most gamers agree with that, but it is important to have different touchstone representations, not for diversity. I don't believe in diversity for diversity's sake. I've never believed in it. I've used that term a lot. I think that creators have to create the story they want. So if their story contains all white people, well, that's the story. I mean, I don't think it's a racist thing. Or if it's just takes place with just men and there are not many women or any women, I don't think it's necessarily a sexist thing. But I understand that some people look at things like gender inclusion and race inclusion and all that kind of stuff in games and see it as a positive step. And I certainly don't see it as a negative step. I think it's great. But this particular gentleman kind of struck a nerve with me because it goes back to this idea, and I'm curious what you guys think about this, about like relating to characters or relating to the games you're playing. And I find it so strange, like from a very, very deep place in me, that anyone's playing a video game in order to relate to the character. I don't want to relate to the characters because I have something similar with Aloy. It's Aloy's story. So I'm an observer of her story, and I don't want to even be involved in the telling of the story at all, like in games like this. Now, there are games like that give you a lot of agency, like Mass Effect, where you can make your own characters, where I'm like, well, yeah, I'll play as a man. I'll play as typical male shepherd with his bald head because that's the way I liked it, because it was a little bit more of me in Shepard because I'm making all the decisions. I'm playing it in a way that resonates with me. But when I see things like that letter, or we read things like that letter, and it's like like, what are you trying to relate to? And also, why is it a negative that there's a female character in it? And through that social justice vein that we were kind of talking about, there are some people that think like Horizon's getting better scores because it features a woman character and stuff like that. I just think it's all kind of silly. So I don't know how Greg feels about the issue. I mean, we talked about it a little bit on PS I Love You, but
it's a multifaceted issue, and you presented a whole bunch of stuff there. You talk about like relating to a character. I don't think is a foreign concept, but I also don't think it is, and it's different for every person, I assume too. But I relate to Aloy, and even though I don't think you do, or that's like a touchstone to it, you do as well. Like, right? She has this father figure in Rost, and so like, they're playing on your emotions of what you feel about your family or your dad or your father figure, or how you would feel to have a character like that. And that's a part of it. And so there's those touchstones that I jump to where I feel like you can relate to characters in so many different ways, where with like Dead Space, Isaac Clarke is just he's an engineered dude. He's not the bro force, I'm here to kill everybody man. And so when he gets sucked into this whole adventure, I feel for him of like, whoa, this isn't what he signed up for kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And to an extent, Nathan Drake as well, right? Who is a fucking world famous pirate killer dude, but is affable and enjoyable and has friends and family and would like to hang out with them, but he wants to go do something and solve this mystery, and it just happens that he has to kill 1 million people and one drinks blue sap. That doesn't make any sense. But then on the other hand, right, where it's like, you're picking and choosing. For me, with Mass Effect, the original trilogy, I enjoyed it and I had a great time with it. But no, I played as FemShep, and that's not where I'm going with the relating thing. I never related with Shepard, period, because they were so militant. I talked about this in last week's Gamescast, talking about Andromeda, and the fact that this time the Pathfinders, like, oh, you guys are straight up normal people having jokes, having this levity, whereas like Commander Shepard always, even when I'm playing as FemShep and making choices and trying to fuck Garrus, like you are very much still talking in like, well, regulations this and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's a turnoff to me. And that's my main turnoff with like Call of Duty games usually, of the whole thing. Like I don't like playing war that seriously where we're saluting and talking about admirals and this, that, and the other. And so that's me, and those are my personal biases, and that's the kind of thing where I just don't care about jarhead talk and why I don't see most military movies that are like into shit like that. And so I understand needing to relate on some level to a character. I just don't think I've ever had it so boiled down, so base level where I'm like, oh, it's a chick. Don't care about her experience. Clearly, there's nothing I can relate to her, right? Like, that's not the point. That's not the disconnect for me.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I mean, you bringing this up, it reminds me of me watching movies. And I think that the difference between movies and video games, specifically games like this that are very cinematic and narrative driven, there's a lot of similarities to movies. The difference being movies are something that you just experience. Video games are something that you interact with. So you are Aloy because you are controlling her agency and what she's doing at that time, literally the choice of what she's saying. But when it comes to movies, it's like I think about how I relate to the characters, and it's kind of what you're saying. It's never like I relate with this character 100% and I'm all in on this.
Yeah.
There's a movie, Sing Street, that Miss Movies was talking to us about, and it's like the story of this dude that tries to impress some girl by scheming and forming a band even though he doesn't play music. And I'm like, at that character, I think I can relate to more than any character of all time, right? But I can't look at any other movie and be like, oh man, I pretty much fully relate with this character and their struggles, and this is my story. Yeah. So when you take that to video games, I'm like, it is more about, do you relate to the situations they're in? Do you relate to the decisions that they have to make and the obstacles that they have to face? And with Aloy in specific, it's like, all right, Aloy, Nathan Drake, their sex doesn't matter to me. And again, that is being said as somebody that has grown up playing as a white dude in video games forever. Shout out to my boy Mario.
What up, Mario?
So it's like, but I can imagine that it is empowering for the sake of diversity and whatever, that even if it doesn't add to the game that she's a woman, it does to women who haven't played as too many female characters, except for Lara Croft or Samus, or, of course there is a whole bunch of them, but like, it's like, even though to us, we don't relate extra because it is, there are people that do relate more because of it. And I think that's an interesting way to look at it, because I relate to this Sing Street character in a way that I don't think, you guys wouldn't.
It's all lenses, and I get that. And that's something we've talked about before, usually when we're talking about like LGBT stuff, where it's like, well, the reason I think this should exist and these characters should exist, because I want people, the minority groups among us to feel like, oh, they are being represented and they're not being ignored, and they can not look to it and say, I relate, but look to it as a normalization thing. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think Horizon does so well, is the fact that really Aloy faces a lot of prejudice in the game because of where she's from. There's like I think there's one with the whole hunting quest and getting the hunting lodge. People are like, I can't believe a woman's in the running to be in charge of the hunting lodge. That's like the only time it's really said. But even that is a secondary problem to the fact of her background and what's happening.
I mean, I think that also though that it being a minor thing still and not just being totally written out is normalizing that this is still an issue, and no matter what, everyone's
but it's not
the
biggest issue.
Exactly, everyone's going to face some type of judgment in whatever way it is, no matter what you are, whatever race, religion, sexual.
And it's the same thing, right? In Horizon, there's I think at least one side quest where you're like talking to a dude and he's like, yeah, my lover is, missing and I need you to, and it's like, cool, not like, oh, you're gay, or hey, I'm gay. Like, it's not that. Just like, hey, the person I love the most is missing, maybe dead. Can you check it out? Yeah, I can do that. Mm-hmm. Do the same thing I do, check their trail, find them, come back.
I think it's all about how you define relate, and that's why I've always been a little confused by this, because no, I can't relate to Aloy, and I can't relate to anything that happened in Horizon. It's about a woman in the future on an Earth that is destroyed and it's roamed by mechanical animals. There is nothing there for me to relate to, and that's why it's fun. You know, like, because I live a more mundane life in the real world. Like, I guess what I'm saying is, like, I see things like this and I'm like, I get excited by a diversity of characters and a diversity of stories and perspectives, not through any lens of like, let's get everyone represented, because I think the artists have to represent their art the way they are. Aloy is a white woman. I'm sure that bothers people because she's not a black woman or something like that. I'm like, who cares? Like, like if Aloy was a man, it wouldn't really make any difference to me. But I like seeing those things because they provide perspective. You can't relate to someone else's perspective unless that is your perspective. You know, so like I play these games the same way, like we talked on PS I Love You, where I was like, it's like reading a book. Like, I'm not reading a Tom Clancy novel being like, man, I can relate to the general here. It's like, no, this is someone else's story. I have no control over this. Like, this is, you know, even when you have agency or control in games, you really don't. I mean, we know that. Like, there's no true game in which, like, any permutation, you're not going to find a permutation that wasn't planned in some way. And so I see things like this and I'm like, first of all, I think it's great that people are playing games for different reasons. And I'm glad that even though this gentleman that wrote in seems super misguided, that people have standards in which they want to play and what they want to see. I think that's fine. But I guess it showed me a little bit of a disconnect in the way I play games or the way I consume fiction, where we all have seen those movies, like, where it's, you know, Seinfeld, like, oh, you're Jerry and I'm George and all. It's like, but like, you can't relate to them. You have no idea. Like, there's nothing about me. I love George. I love Larry David. That's a really great example. Like, I wish I was Larry David because I think he's so fucking funny. He doesn't give a flying fuck about anything and just lives his life. But I'm not like Larry David really in any way. You know, like, if I was, I would be happy about that. I'm like maybe 20% Larry David. I can't relate to Larry David's experiences. I can't relate to Larry David's doing. That's not why I watch Curb Your Enthusiasm. I watch it because it makes me laugh. And so I see things like that and I'm like, why do people need fiction to relate to fiction? It's just strange. Like, I absorb fiction because I don't want myself for it to be about me too. I don't want it to be about my world. I don't want it to be about anything that has to do with me. That's why it's fun. I don't watch Band of Brothers and I'm like, man, I'm just like, you know, Winters here. I'm like, no, this is not. Colin's not involved in this.
I hear you, and that's the thing. But I think games are different than reading or watching, and that's the thing where it is like Tim can go play the game, and you and I are super stealthy, and he's using melee, which I only used for, you know, critical strikes after I had taken somebody down by their weakness and stuff. So there is that choice of I'm playing the game the way I play the game. I'm using the weapons I use. You use that machine gun thing I never even bought. Or
right,
whatever.
but that goes back to like that's us playing a video game. Tim brought up like Mario. It's like, if you can relate to certain characters and certain things, just like you can relate to a protagonist or an antagonist in a book, then certainly you should be able to, at a base level, relate to anything going on in a video game. But you can't relate to Mario. Who the fuck relates to Mario? You know,
Brian Altano.
Who relates to Tetris? Who relates to, like,
Russians?
So I did always choose Princess Toadstool in Mario 2.
Oh, really? I chose Toad.
I was always,
but the Toad was the G. You pick things up quickly. Now
Peach could fly. Excuse me, Toadstool. Fuck this Peach bullshit.
So I don't know. It's like I guess it's kind of a multiple points because I think it's great that there's diversity in games because I think that is empowering and important to people out there. It's not important to me, but I am a white male and I accept that. And while I don't agree with diversity for diversity's sake, I do agree with diversity of perspectives and diversity of stories that can be told. I'd certainly find it quite boring if a white man was telling every single story that I consumed. But I never looked at Horizon. I was like, this would be much more relatable if the mechanical dinosaur hunter in the apocalyptic future was a man. Like, I guess that's what I'm saying. Like, there's nothing relatable in that story. And when you look at video games, there's almost nothing relatable in any story. If you define relate and relatable as the definition of the word, you know, like and that's why I think that, you know, I get a little disturbed with this rancor about women, about inclusion, being inclusionary. And I'm like, of course we should have those things, but why can't I'm hung up on this guy because I'm like, why can't you relate to someone who's not a white man? It's just weird, you know? And is every video game you ever played you trying to relate to something? Because I guess I just never looked at it through that prism, that lens, where I look at my favorite books, Yossarian and Catch-22, like one of my favorite protagonists in anything ever. It's like nothing relatable to it. Like, I don't know what the fuck that was like. It was terrible, but it's a great story. I enjoyed that. I love that character. When I watch I watch John Adams and I revere these men that they're portraying, but I'm like, I can't relate to their experience. That's what's fun about it. I can't relate. I live in fucking 2017. I own a business. I live in an apartment with my friend.
Kevin's kind of your slave though, so you can relate on that level.
That's not funny, Greg. You can't joke about slavery.
There's an interesting like kind of side tangent to this where I was on GameFAQs reading about something else, and someone posted there was
entire life.
an article on The Guardian, and it was Horizon Zero Dawn, the feminist action game we've been waiting for.
Okay.
Didn't read the article, but you
just
can
that headline in general, you're like, that's inflammatory.
You can kind of like, that's going to get some negativity attached to it, right? And his response to it was he posted it, and the subject line was, "Is this game all about sexism?" And then in it, which said, "This article's just put me right off the game. Is it going to be all political and a little social justice warrior circle jerk about how powerful women are, like this article suggests, or is it just going to be something that normal people can just play and enjoy?" And it's just like, there's so much. It's a very problematic situation all across the board, right? But I think that it's weird that this guy can see that thing and just be like, "Nah, fuck this," just based off someone else's article. It's like, look at the game, make your own kind of decisions from it. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, I think that there's nothing wrong with people taking some type of political understanding from playing the game. Like, that's a good thing when there's layers and it's deep and it means different things to different people, right? Like, I would be shocked if there was a AAA PlayStation 4 exclusive game on the level of Horizon where it's like you play it through and the only thing you can take from it is, this is a feminist game. If you play through the game and play through the story and it's like, oh, I can see some feminist, the tones to it or whatever. That's one thing. But like, this guy's acting like, oh man, this is a like, what's that even mean?
Yeah, I agree in the sense that, I agree with you, but I also, not to his point, but the contrary or a different point of view is that when you see, and this is why the fucking endless, the Rubin Report, a show I really love, Dave Rubin, a buddy of mine, runs it. He made up this term called the Oppression Olympics, which is like my favorite term that I've heard in a long time, where he's like, everyone is trying to be more oppressed than the next person, and everyone's judged based on like, how oppressed are you? Well, if you're a poor black man, your oppression level is this, way more oppressed than the middle-class white man, who's less oppressed than the transgender person. And you see these kinds of things happening where, like, with Bayonetta is a great example, where I looked at the game like Bayonetta from Platinum and I was like, well, this is a strong, sexually confident female character that's destroying people and she's fucking kicking ass, and what an empowering character that must be for women. But that's not the case for the people that look for everything to complain about, because she's too scantily clad and sexualized. So Bayonetta is not good enough. You know what I mean? And then you see Aloy, and that's too much. And I'm like, why can't we just... First of all, I mean, I don't think it's very spoilers, but like, Horizon's society is very female dominated in the game. So it doesn't just stop with Aloy, but it has nothing to do with anything. No one ever says a goddamn word about it. That's just the way it is. And so... And
there's male leaders and there's female leaders, right. And that's the whole point, is they're just leaders. They're in charge of whatever they're in charge of, and nobody's like... Yeah.
But like, why is everyone... Because I guess why I bring up the Oppression Olympics, which again is an amazing term, is... On one end, you have it the way, Rubin defines it, which is interesting, but you have it on the other end too, with like everyone trying to be oppressed by the inclusion of diversity, by the inclusion of all these things. And I just look at it from a very base level where I'm like, why can't we just look at it as just different stories from different perspectives that we cannot relate to, that we should not relate to, that no one relates to? No one can relate to fucking Commander Shepard flying through mass relays because it's fucking fake.
Well, I've been on an airplane.
And so, like, but that's what's so fucking fun about it. If I found a character that I could absolutely relate to, then I'm playing my life, and that's boring. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. So people should embrace this kind of stuff, not from a, if it pleases feminists, that's great. I don't care. Like, if it pleases, all these things, all these quotas that must be met, that's fantastic. But from a storytelling perspective, we should embrace this kind of thing. We should embrace an Aloy. We should embrace, more female characters, more minority characters, because it just gives us different perspectives by which we can't relate to them per se, but we can enjoy them all the same. And then it gives everything a little bit more of a special feel. More of a not to use the nomenclature I've been using, but a diverse feel, just based on fiction. Because you read some of this shit and it's like, you can't, like this guy, you can't read the Scarlet Letter because Hester Prynne is a fucking woman. Doesn't make any sense.
No, because she committed adultery.
I mean, I can relate to her because I too got fucked by my priest and became pregnant.
Whoa!
But You understand what I'm saying? It's just strange to me. Like so I like seeing things like this. I hope people keep driving forward. Everyone's all, there's some people upset that Ellie's going to be the main character in The Last of Us 2. And I'm like, isn't that the obvious evolution?
Same guy yeah.
Isn't that the obvious? Yeah, the
Oh,
obvious,
it's the same dude.
Yeah.
obvious evolution of the series.
He feels like he's being pushed out of video games, which is just weird. Just a
Oh,
weird
sir,
thing.
I think you're pushing yourself out of video games. And I don't know. I wish people would just enjoy this diversity.
Yeah.
Just because fiction becomes more richer and deeper when we get those kinds of things. If the next great game I like is a white male, I'm sure I'll play as a white male in Mass Effect. Okay.
Fucking racist.
But that's because I'm a full-blown racist. So it's a hard thing to kind of tap into.
Tim, how do you relate to Sonic the Hedgehog?
Well, he goes fast. I dream of that. I can't do it though. What's up there? No. I was gonna say hey there. Then I said what's up there. That was weird. Hey, anyways, you just watched some awesome piece of content over here on Kind of Funny Games. And when I say awesome, I mean it was probably okay. So you can click right here to subscribe to get way more okay content, or you can click here to get, more content from Kind of Funny, our other channel that's just as okay as this one, if not a little bit worse, because, we're pretty game centric. I want to get that one better though. Like this one's beating it now on, subscribers, and like that's kind of sad to me. So help people like me not be sad.